Hey everybody, what is going on? I am Maximus Rex, and this is Big Baby Reviews. Today's Dale Keown Day, but the last Dale Keown Day for the foreseeable future, just because this is The Darkness meets The Incredible Hulk, I guess you would call it. It just says The Darkness, The Incredible Hulk, so it's kind of an odd title, just like that on its own. And this is the last Dale Keown penciled drawn full comic book that I own. I'm not aware of much that he's done, past this point. So if I find some, I'll come back and do some reviews. But I think he's been pretty much exclusively a cover artist for the last few years. There's rumors of a Pit comic, a new one coming out soon, but still haven't seen anything really tangible about that. So not quite sure where that's gone. So let's talk about this. The cover looks great, but there is a slight difference in the artwork, maybe not of Dale Keown, maybe not so apparent on the cover, but more so inside. There's still that kind of Dale Keown cartoony bombast when he's creating these characters down here. The general aesthetic and the hatching is the same. I do feel, though, that he's toned down a little bit the cartooniness or the more 90s exaggerated features in storytelling and artwork generally during the 90s. He's kind of toned it down to a slightly more realistic and illustrative style where, proportions are a little more reasonable. The Hulk obviously is a pretty extreme character, so his proportions are still pretty big and similar to, the big hands and stuff that he would do in The Incredible Hulk. But I do find, as far as the facial features go, he has humanized him a little bit more. He still looks angry, and Hulk-like, and the short nose and all that stuff, but as you see inside the comic, it definitely feels toned down from what he was doing when he was actually on the Hulk back in the 90s, and what he was doing on Pit as well. There's almost like a Mark Silvestri vibe to it, just like I said, a little more earlier Mark Silvestri, like early Cyberforce Wolverine Mark Silvestri, where he's trying to again be more illustrative and a little more realistic. It's credited, also the story writer is Paul Jenkins, so I will give him credit for just writing kind of a small, solid, you're out kind of story for both characters, and I think as a crossover works really well. And also I'll give him credit for not throwing in too much dialogue and too much narration and stuff to explain things. There's not too much to read on each page. There's a lot to look at, and I think it strikes a good balance between pictures and words. Art, again, is credited to Dale Keown. I have to assume that he's maybe still just not even inking and maybe just penciling and playing with the layers. Excuse me, not the layers, the levels. Once you do this on Photoshop, once you've penciled something, if it's very tight and clean, you can just kind of play with the levels and darken the line to make it look like it's inked. So I still think he's kind of doing something like that. He's a very tight, clean penciler, so at a certain point it just seems redundant to have someone ink over him. Colors, Matt Mila. Colors are pretty decent all the way throughout, I would say. Letters and design, Robin Spear and Dreamers Designs, Mark Roslin and Dennis Heisler. Wow, okay, a lot of credits there just for the letters. Cover A by Dale Keown, and there were covers by Mark Silvestri, Joe Eames, and Steve Furchow that I do not have on hand. So, quick explanation who the Darkness is, who the Hulk is. You know who the Hulk is, I'm sure at this point. The Darkness is kind of similar in that, he has access to the darkness and can create things out of shadows, basically, make them tangible. And he's also a hired killer. That's what's kind of explained here. And right away, this more realistic take on everything that I feel Dale Keown is doing, you can kind of see, I think, in his depiction of this character, the Darkness. Jackie Estacado is his name. Such a typical kind of ethnic mafia name. It just sounds very cheesy, I think. But anyways, even back when I was a kid and the Darkness was coming out, I thought it was pretty cheesy. This whole thing seems photo-referenced, I feel like. Even this guy here, like maybe a little bit is traced from a picture, which is fine, you're allowed to do that. But just to get that realistic feel, these people in the subway. And then I don't think he's necessarily doing it on these foreground characters, or just maybe more in background stuff. This guy here almost feels, photo-referenced. Kind of funny that, nothing changes much in both these panels. It's a stat, right? So just his eyes, smart to do. Saves time, obviously, but feels like maybe this character in the back should have at least had some sort of reaction or movement. What we're seeing here is that Jackie sees dead people, right? What I don't understand, though, someone maybe can answer this. He says next Wednesday, aneurysm. So this guy had an aneurysm, or is going to have an aneurysm next Wednesday. Like he could see the future, or that people are going to die, I guess. Nowadays, I dream only about the crimes of the past and a very bleak future. I see dead people. Are they already dead? I'm not sure. I think it's a bit of both. You'll see throughout the storyline. Nice kind of just visual detail to have these darklings, you know, in the shadows of the subway as it goes through the tunnel to remind us of, you know, the darkness and this guy's kind of secret power. And then he's looking over and he's been interested for the last kind of bit in this gentleman here, and he can see, you know, the aura, I guess you would describe of the Hulk. Pretty cool image here. Probably done with, you know, Hulk being drawn on another page and then overlaying that in Photoshop, something like that. Pretty cool effect. I think it works well. Again, the colors, while being very kind of computer colored and stuff, are pretty subdued and not too exaggerated, and work well, I think, with the kind of more realistic style that Dale Keown's establishing here. Just, yeah, everyone seems to be drawn a little more realistically. This almost feels, again, like a picture reference or traced off New York subway station somewhere. So Banner, as he usually does, trails off, you know, walks into a maintenance only room, and Estacado follows him, and Banner pulls a gun on him, thinking obviously that he's being followed as usual and that this guy's CIA or FBI. And it was pretty interesting because he has figured out, as we know, that he is that Bruce Banner is the Hulk. So really what he wants is his autograph, which is a pretty funny kind of, I didn't expect that. So funny story moment. And again, look at the amount of narration and dialogue and stuff. Short and snappy. The pictures tell the story, and it's just a breeze to read through and get through. So he does sign the autograph, walks off, and at that point, as he's looking over in Banner's direction, once again sees that kind of aura representation of the Hulk, but also that all these people here are going to die, right? So I guess it's he sees that's going to happen. And again, like, just the ultra realism of the station, the signs and stuff in the foreground and middle ground. This is obviously digitally thrown in there, but yeah, really going, like, working a lot from pictures here. I mean, Dale Keown clearly in his pit style and stuff is a gifted artist, so to start using photo reference, if you're not already a talented artist and you start using photo reference, you're not necessarily going to get better or draw better, right? So you have to have already the knowledge of anatomy and perspective and all these things to, you know, properly interpret a picture like that. And basically what Jackie sees is, you know, this train sulfur. So let me read it for you so it's clear rather than me paraphrasing. They're all going to die. The darkness knows it. He sees all and keeps what it learns to itself, but it can't hide from me. So I guess he can see through the shadows. Driver's been stone cold for an hour, shot once through the head from 2 feet. Chechnyan terrorist. This was planned long ago. Sulfur and copper, flashing red light, train go boom. Something wicked this way comes. So he's seen that, and he knows that he needs the Hulk's help. So he pushes Banner in front of the train, which is interesting because he knows, obviously, that Banner's going to turn into the Hulk. So finally we get to see the Dale Keown Hulk once again, you know, the big musculature, the big hands. But as you'll see with the depiction of the Hulk's face, it's much more subdued than it was, you know, maybe 10 years, 12 years earlier when he was doing the Incredible Hulk for Marvel before going on to Image. There's another stat, right, where he just used the same panel, just moved the glasses over here. Replace this guy with the Hulk punching in. Saves time on drawing once again, which is smart. And if there's a good storytelling reason for it too, so it's a quick moment, right? So here we get the Hulk in all his 2004 Dale Keown glory. So again, the body very similar to how he was before, but I do feel like his depiction of the face is definitely held back a little bit more. It's to fit with this kind of realistic thing he's doing. It seems like that movement kind of started in the early 2000s. Recently, Rob Liefeld on his podcast was talking about Joe Quesada kind of moving over to photo referenced art and stuff. So I feel like this is kind of a definitely a movement in around that time to go more the illustrative route, the more realistic route, or the movie route, right? Because these superhero movies were starting to show up. And I guess, you know, Marvel at that time with Joe Quesada as its president figured that they needed, you know, to incorporate more of that into the comics. It kind of started with X-Men when Grant Morrison and Frank Quitely did it right after the X-Men movies and brought in a lot of the elements from the movies into the comic, right? After that, once those movies were popular, obviously the comics were going to try to take some of that juice for themselves. So basically what Jackie realizes here is the Hulk, he's just too strong. He can't be affected by the Darklings or the darkness itself. And only it says here it's making him stronger because he's getting angry, right? The old Hulk trope. Another great shot of the Hulk here. I mean, I maybe prefer Dale Keown being a little more cartoony, a little bit more dynamic, but I got nothing bad to say about this. It's a pretty darn good depiction of the Hulk. I'll still take this over a lot of other different artists. Just something he's got with the proportions that work. The big hands I always thought are weird, just because I always wonder, my question is always, how does the Hulk pick his nose, right? If he has to, does the Hulk get a cold, I guess? Does the snot collect in his sinuses? I'm not sure, does the Hulk have mucus? He's certainly got saliva, right? So yeah, basically use the Hulk to destroy all these terrorists and destroy the bomb. Saved all the people. And, philosophical discussion between the two, the fact that they're kind of the same, right? And police come on over to Jackie Estacada. Who are you? I'm the guy with the lacerated arm. So saying I just got injured. If the one you're looking for is big, green, and smells like a cow's backside, he went that way. So interesting that you point out, so maybe the Hulk does smell kind of funky. That would make sense, right? This is the first reference I've ever had to how the Hulk smells. You'd have to assume the Hulk is pretty stinky. If you ever heard stories about Andre the Giant and his, the wrestler, right? His insanely huge and stinky farts, you'd assume the Hulk would be that way as well. Don't think the Hulk would be prone to bathing, so yeah, his BO would probably be pretty intense. Smelling like a cow kind of makes sense, right? For size-wise, how big the Hulk is. So the police officer's like, he's nothing, go, because obviously they're going after the Hulk. I say officers, they could be whoever, right? Some police organization, some government organization. Oh, and be careful, he gets kind of pissy. And that last shot of these cops are, company dudes with their dead faces, right? Tells us that darkness knows that they're going to die. It is, I gotta say, just real quick, because I forgot to mention it, in this discussion here, it is brought up that, like, Banner kind of chastises Jackie for having killed the last terrorist, and then, Jackie has to remind him that as the Hulk, he basically kills people all the time, right? Which is, you have to assume is true with the way the Hulk reacts to things, and destroys buildings and whatever. You would have to think there'd be collateral damage and innocent people being killed. There's an interesting miniseries. I forget who the writer is. I'm really sorry. It was drawn by Corbin. Is it Azzarello? I think Azzarello wrote it. I'm not quite sure. I think it's called Banner. But it shows you that the Hulk would, he'd just be like a force of nature, like a nuclear bomb, right? He would just destroy everything and kill for sure. There's no way he would, whether intentional or not, there's no way he would not kill with his escapades, right? Which is pretty interesting to think about, I think. So this is why I mean this is pretty clever, interesting crossover as compared to many, where it doesn't change much for the characters in or out, but some kind of interesting philosophical concepts are kind of discussed and glossed over pretty quickly, but still, a little deeper maybe than most comics to a certain extent. Just a very cool one-shot, easy to read, fun story that makes you think, at least a little bit. So there you go, guys. That is my review of The Darkness of the Incredible Hulk. If you are still subscribed and you're still watching, thank you so much for your support. I really do appreciate it. If you are not subscribed, please do so below. It only takes a quick second for you, and it helps the channel grow, helps get us out there to other people who are into comic books, just like we are. So everyone out there, thanks again, and have yourselves an awesome day.
Like! Subscribe! Like! Subscribe!
King Comics presents Big Baby, Volume 1, Issues 1 to 13, 204 pages of story and art. King Comics also presents Star Crasher one-shot, 32 pages, cosmic sci-fi surrealist adventure. You can find these fine comics at KingComics.CA, at MaximusRex13 on Instagram, or on Facebook, MaxRex or Big Baby.